The first thing that made my stomach drop that morning wasn't the sight of strange cars idling outside my driveway but the heavy fists hammering against my door with the kind of rhythm you only hear when trouble is about to come crashing in, and when I opened it I was met by three broad men in dark jackets, clipboards in hand, one flashing a cheap laminated badge and declaring with smug finality, "We're here on behalf of the HOA. And you and your family need to vacate this property immediately for failure to pay your community dues." And my pulse pounded with equal parts fury and disbelief because my dues were fully current, my paperwork flawless, and even if they hadn't been, these men had no legal power to put their boots on my porch and demand that I abandon my own home. But the way they puffed out their chests and blocked my doorway told me they were used to getting their way through intimidation. And I could see the neighbors' curtains twitching as whispers spread across the cul-de-sac, everyone wondering if the sheriff was finally about to haul me off. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that behind the calm look in my eyes and the deliberate way I leaned against the doorframe was the confidence of someone who had spent years not only practicing law but specializing in the very subject these bullies were attempting to bluff me with. Because what none of them could imagine was that I wasn't just another homeowner being cornered by HOA thuggery. I was a bankruptcy lawyer, licensed, seasoned, and all too familiar with the exact laws they were trying to abuse, and I decided right then to let them tighten their own noose. So I asked coolly, "And what authority do you believe you have here?" And the tallest one sneered, "We've been contracted by the board to evict you. You're months behind. Your property will be seized and sold to cover your debts." And he shoved a stack of crumpled papers toward me. The so-called notice printed with vague threats and a clumsy stamp that was supposed to look official, and the others chimed in with threats about locking me out, changing the keys, moving my belongings to the curb, and as they spoke I could feel my neighbors' pitying stares boring into my back. But what I also felt was the slow burn of righteous anger, the kind that sharpens your words before you even open your mouth. And so I stepped forward, forcing them to take half a step back. And I let my voice carry across the street so everyone could hear. "Gentlemen, I don't know whether to laugh or call the police first, because what you're doing here is not just illegal, it's laughably stupid, and I'm about to educate you in front of this entire neighborhood." And as they frowned, confused, I pulled from my pocket the worn leather case that carried my bar card and credentials, flipping it open so the afternoon sun gleamed across the lettering. And I announced in a voice as sharp as a gavel striking wood, "I am a bankruptcy attorney, licensed in this state, and you just attempted to execute an eviction under the color of authority you do not possess, which makes this impersonation, harassment, and fraud, and if you take one more step toward my door you will be facing not just local police but federal charges." And their faces drained of color as I continued, "Not only am I not behind on dues, but even if I were, the HOA has no unilateral right to evict a homeowner. Only a court can issue such an order, and guess what? I've argued those cases in court myself, and I win them." And the shorter collector began stammering excuses, muttering about misunderstandings, while the tallest tried to recover his swagger by saying, "We were just sent here, we're just doing our job." But the neighbors were already murmuring in shock, one even laughing at the sight of these so-called enforcers backpedaling, and I pressed harder, pulling my phone from my pocket, dialing the sheriff's department on speaker so every word was public, reporting an attempted unlawful eviction, impersonation of officials, and harassment by unauthorized debt collectors acting under a false HOA mandate. And when the dispatcher confirmed units were on the way, the men shifted nervously, their bravado leaking like air from a punctured tire, and within minutes the distant wail of sirens grew closer, red and blue lights soon washing across the white siding of the houses. And as deputies rolled up the cul-de-sac fell silent, everyone watching. As I handed over the fake notices, explained the fraudulent threats, and presented my legal credentials, and the deputies wasted no time cuffing the loudest of the collectors, his face pale and sweating as he muttered about just following orders, while the other two were detained and questioned, and I stood tall, not gloating but resolute, telling my neighbors in a voice meant for them as much as for the thugs, "This is how you stop a bully. You stand on the truth and the law, and you don't let intimidation shove you off your property." And the applause that followed, quiet at first, built into a wave of relief and approval, neighbors nodding to me with gratitude, some even stepping closer to shake my hand, whispering thanks for standing up not just for myself but for everyone who had been quietly harassed by the same HOA board. And as the cruisers pulled away with the collectors inside, I looked back at my home. Sunlight spilling across the porch, the papers they'd dropped scattered like trash on the driveway, and I thought about the pounding on my door, the arrogance in their threats, and the way their power collapsed the moment real authority stepped in, and I felt the deep satisfaction that comes not from revenge but from justice, because the HOA had sent collectors to evict me, but instead they had exposed themselves to the entire neighborhood, and the man they thought they could scare into silence turned out to be the one person who could dismantle their bluff with a single badge, a single phone call, and the unshakable weight of the law. And as the evening sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold, I sat on my porch with calm resolve, knowing that the story would spread through the community like wildfire, the tale of how the HOA sent debt collectors to push out a family, only to be shut down publicly, decisively, and permanently by a bankruptcy lawyer who knew the law better than they ever would, and in that moment I knew I hadn't just defended my home, I had reminded everyone watching that bullies can only thrive in silence, and that silence ends the moment someone with both knowledge and courage says, "No more."